Alright guys, welcome back to our red review here for Kaldheim. I'm not going to say Kaladesh anymore, I swear. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. Yanks is with us again. We're going to go ahead and finish out all the rest of the videos today, so if you're watching this on YouTube, they should all be uploaded by the end of the day. Alright, let's go ahead and get started.
The first card we have in red here is Arnie Broken Bow. It's a 3/3 for 2 and a red, legendary creature, human berserker. It has haste and boast. For pay 1, you may change Arnie Broken Brow's base power to 1 plus the greatest power among other creatures you control until end of turn. So you get a 3-mana 3/3 with haste that comes out and it can attack right away. And if it's not turn 3 and you have another mana, you can activate its boast right away if you have something, bigger on the battlefield or equal size, because even an equal size power creature will give this +1.
It does say other creature, so it doesn't count itself, so you can't just get a free +1/+0, unfortunately, right?
No,
and it's
because
only its power.
That would infinitely grow, unfortunately. Every 1 mana you would get one over and over again.
No, because boast only goes one time, right?
Oh, true, yeah. I guess
Yeah.
there is one card in the set that lets you do it twice, but yeah, you're right on that.
So, I mean, it's a 3/3 haste for 3, which is already, I'm on board, I'm sold, let's go. The ability, may or may not come in handy, just depending on what else you have on the board. We haven't seen green yet, so we don't know how big a lot of the creatures are going to get, but overall, we're seeing a ton of 3/3s. And then a lot of our cards, except for those super expensive ones, are topping out at 4/4s for 4. So, I mean, he's not going to get a whole lot bigger, so in the average deck, I'm going to evaluate this as a 3/3 for 3, I think.
Yeah, the nice thing about this card is it seems to fit in a bunch of different red decks. Like, this is a good card in a red-white aggro deck. 3-mana 3/3 haste is good. It's good in red-green, assuming we have some big green monsters. And it could be good in red-black if berserkers is a theme. So it's a pretty flexible red card. You're not locking yourself into a color combination. And the stats are good. Yeah, I like this card.
Yeah, both human and berserker are going to have a ton of overlap. And again, like I said, a 3/3 for 3 with haste, I mean, that's going to fit in any red deck just because it's good on its own. It doesn't need any help. So what are we thinking for score here? It's a rare. I mean, I think it's a little underpowered for a rare.
Yeah, this is not your first pick slam dunk rare. But it's a card I'm happy to take, third,
absolutely.
Fourth, fifth pick.
I mean, I'm happy to take it if there's no premium removal. It's still going to be one of the best. It's going to be the best creature in the pack, most likely.
Sure, I think this is like a solid 3. And it's got potential to be better if you've got a lot of big bodies or you're very aggressive and you want this on your top end.
Yeah, I'm a little higher on it, not by much, just a 3/5. It's not winning the game, but 3 is like filler I'm excited about. I feel like this might be slightly better, but not by much.
Sure, and maybe it gets a 3/5 just for its flavor text, with which I headbutted a troll and won.
I did not see that, and he's got the little horn coming out of his. I like that. That was good. Yeah, 0.5 for flavor. Yeah, I honestly, it probably is closer to a 3 because its boast ability is really not going to get that much value, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm in that 3 to 3.5. All right, so we got Guard Cavalry. It is a dwarf berserker for 2/2/2. What we like to see for our bears. Tap, target creature gains haste until end of turn. This is a lot better than what we've seen in some of the other give target creature hastes, because those creatures on their own were not as good, whereas this is a bear, so I'm already happy to fill my curve with it if I need 2-drops. So it by itself is good enough. Not something you're excited to play. You usually want your 2-drops to do a little something more, but this is actually a decent ability, I think.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd combination of abilities in that making it bigger than what we've seen, kind of like when you see bigger death touchers, right? It's you kind of a creature that you're tapping to give something haste, a lot of times you're fine that it's small because you're not attacking with it anyway, you want to tap with it. But making it a 2/2 is just, as opposed to a 2-mana 1/2, which we've seen, is just better.
I would typically agree with you, except for the fact that so like a 1-mana 1/1, I personally would not ever want to run, but a 2-mana 2/2, sometimes you just kind of have to run. I find that way more valuable.
Oh, I agree. It's definitely better. It's just, I think that's just a little bit of an odd combination. That's all. But yeah, no, it's a 2-mana 2/2 is always playable. It's got upside, especially in an aggressive deck where you can just turns everything you play into a haste creature.
That said, I'm not like, ooh, this is a home run by any means, but I'm also our 2 rate is like cards that you know you'll have to run, but you're not happy about. And then 3 is like, ooh, I'm excited to fill my curve with this. So I'm in that 2.5 range.
Yeah, I agree. Ability's fine. 2 mana, 2/2. Berserker, we're seeing a lot of them. So even if there's not a specifically Berserker theme, we've seen some other more general tribal if you have creatures that share a type. So that could be relevant as well.
It is kind of funny. The last card, I was like, this looks like it should be a dwarf, but maybe dwarfs aren't as big of a thing in this set because we hadn't really seen too many. And then the next one was a dwarf, so I feel like the last one should have been. But human overlapped really well with a lot of the other colors, so we'll see how well dwarf does. All right, moving along.
All right, next up we have Basaltravager. It's a 4/2 for 3 and a red. So another 4-drop, which you've seen a lot of in this set. It's a giant wizard. And when Basaltravager enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to any target, where X is the greatest number of creatures you control that have a creature type in common. So there's a payoff right there for what I was saying about, berserkers and creatures that share a creature type. I think this card is very good. People might be reminded of Flame Tongue Kavu at 4 mana 4/2. Now that always did 4 damage, which is definitely better than this because 4 mana is 4 is not going to be the typical.
We've seen this
thing you hit on X
a couple of times, right? There was like a robot looking 4/2 that dealt damage based on spells in yard. There was and they're always 4/2 red 4 drops, right? So it's reasonably common. There was another one I think that dealt damage based on wizards in play or party members. That was very similar. I will say this plays very nicely in the Is It archetype just because we have so many shapeshifters. So you can have 1 or 2 shapeshifters in play and then it doesn't really matter what your other creature is and it kind of overlaps very, very nicely. So that's going to be probably the place where you will get the most value out of this.
Yeah, it's you get a 4 mana 4/2 that comes attached to somewhere on average between a shock and a bolt. It's going to do 2. It's going to probably do an average 2.5. Damage. 2 or 3 would be my guess.
That sounds right for average, and it's weird because we always disagree on that.
But yeah, I like this card. You can take it early and try to sort of build around it, but you don't have to. You can take it late with just a few synergies. You got a lot of creatures in this set. In fact, most of them that have 2 creature types, plus the changeling. So I think this card's again another like right around a 3.
I'm also in that 3 ballpark as well. There's enough overlap in the creature type where I think it will get some good value.
Yep, agreed.
All right.
We have seen some cards that specifically care about giants as well.
All right, breakneck berserker with haste, a 3/2 for 3 with haste. So vanilla 3/2s for 3 is our bare minimum 2, something you have to fill your curve with, but not happy about it. Haste gives it a nice little bonus, whether that's super relevant with 2 power. Not as much, but what are you thinking?
Well, I think it's interesting, first of all, that we've now seen 4 red cards and 3 of them have haste or have something to do with haste. Unsurprisingly, red looks very aggressive as always, and limited.
Agreed.
But yeah, 3 mana 3/2. We've seen a lot of these cards with a keyword ability, whether it be haste. We've seen 3 mana 3/2s with menace,
filters.
Yeah, they're all kind of, they're all playable. Depends a little bit on the format, but I don't. If red is as aggressive as it looks, he seems to fit in pretty well. I'll play this card.
Yeah, definitely. I will say that I think that the format so far from what I've seen seems more aggressive than what we've seen in the last few sets, only because red, is typically more aggressive. That's what we're seeing here as well. But we also saw a lot more aggression in the white and black categories, which we don't typically see. There was a lot of like play second spells, give counters. Just white and black also seemed very aggressive. So it's going to be interesting to see how like a 3/2 haster plays out when so many other decks are on that more aggressive like theme, right?
Yeah, and the nice thing about this is one of the things that decks like to play to break up aggressive attacks are 2 mana 1/3s. This attacks right through those on the play.
So are you in the 2.5 range? What are you thinking?
I think I'm in the 2.5 range. I mean, you're going to need to take your deck into context with this, right? This card is going to be way better in an aggressive deck. Controlling, maybe blue-red spells deck or something like that isn't necessarily going to want this as much, but it'll still play it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit on the fence. I feel like because the format is so much more aggressive overall that this loses a little bit of value for me. Just because this is the kind of deck I want in a slightly slower format where my deck is going to come out ahead and get you and then top it off with a little reach, whereas this feels like it's just going to meet some other dirtily 2-drop or 3-drop that's just going to box relatively well, or even produce a 1/1 soldier token when it leaves after it blocks my creature, right?
Yeah, I will say these type of cards are usually very good in racing formats, though, because it's hard to plan for haste. But yeah, if you're right, we have seen some stuff that leaves behind, 1/1. So
Yeah, the 2-drop 2/1 for that leaves behind a dude, that would
yeah,
just suck.
that feels really bad. Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and move along. We have a calamity bearer. We have a giant berserker for 4. It's a 3/4. So, okay stats. We see 3/4s for 4 quite often, usually in the common slot that are vanilla. If a giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, double that damage instead. That seems good.
Yeah, that's super powerful. That in itself turns this alone into a 6/4.
Into a 6/4, yeah. There's
Right,
a fair
so
amount of giant synergies as well that we saw.
yeah, it doubles the damage that Basaltravager deals when it enters the battlefield, and is a giant. So right there, that turns your Basaltravager into a Flame Tongue Kavu. Just those 2 cards that deals 4. Um, so yeah, I really, you really do have to treat this as a 4-mana 6/4.
Yeah, no, I
the only
agree.
thing, the only things that where that doesn't apply is something like a Smite the Monsters can't kill it, and like a Vanquish the Weak can, but we haven't seen either of those in this set. Um, so yeah, I like this card. I don't think it's amazing, just because we have to still see. Red is probably where most of the giants are, so as we go, maybe there are more than I'm expecting there to be.
I feel like blue, we saw a ton in blue. There
We
was
did see it. We did see a bunch of blue and some changelings as well.
Oh yeah, shapeshifters are gonna count for this, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I like this card. It's not. I don't think it's game breaking unless you have a whole bunch of giants. So it is context dependent.
Yeah, it's got a bit of a ceiling for sure. But like I said, on its own, it's a 6/4 for 4 with some good class synergy, creature type synergy.
Yeah, I think I've got this at like a 3/5. Um, it could be a little higher, but I'm putting it around a 3/5.
I think it's a 3/5. I think in order for it to be better, you need a lot of giants, and a lot of the giants are too expensive, I think, to pack your deck with too many of them. There was a couple cheaper ones at the 4 range. There was a 5-drop one that was cheaper if you had another wizard, I think. But again, that makes it 4 mana. So for this to get really good value, I'd want my giants to be curving out on 2 and 3, playing this, and then having them double their damage. So that's the reason I don't think it goes up too much higher, but it's a 3/5 on its own just because it's already a cheap dude.
Yeah, the nice thing about this being giants that doubles is, as you just said, giants are often pretty big. So that means your double is not going a lot of times from 2 to 4, but 4 to 8 or 6 to 12. And then if you get anything with trample, this could be pretty nasty.
Yeah, my only point was that just because it's all the giants are so heavy, you can't actually have that many because you're so limited to how many 5 and 6 drops you can actually have in your deck, right?
Agreed.
So its synergy is kind of capped based on that requirement alone. Versus like a berserker mechanic, which are both big and small. And here we have another giant berserker. So if it had been berserker, we could have got the little guys and the big guys, which I would think would put this previous calamity bear much higher in my book.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, cinderheart giant, guys. We have a big trampling giant like we just talked about for a lot of mana, though. 7. When it dies, it deals 7 damage to a creature an opponent controls chosen at random. All right, so we're getting a little Hearthstone-y here, but that's okay. It's still a big fat dude.
Yeah, it's a 7 mana 7/6 trample that's when it dies, it's going to kill something. It might not be the thing you want it to kill, but it's going to kill something.
Which basically probably makes it a 2 for 1, right?
Yeah. Which you're hoping to get for 7 mana because if it's dying, it's probably, I guess it could trade for an equally sized creature, or you're going to lose mana to a removal spell.
This is going to be a lot better in sealed than it will be in draft, just because of the top heavy expensive price, and with how quick the format seems to be developing. Like as far as when games will be determined, I think it'll be earlier than average. But 7 mana even in a draft is not too bad for a curve topper. Doable.
Yeah. I said I'll play this card. You're never going to play a second one because it's 7 mana. So,
agreed.
That limits how early you're going to take them in draft. But it's going to be very good. It's going to be good in sealed. It's going to win some games for you. Get some value. I've got this right around like a 2/5.
I also have it at a 2/5. the more aggressive the format will be, the lower I will be on this, but it's also got the giant and berserker synergies, and it's a 2-for-1, so I like it. Big body. Craven Hulk, it's a 4-mana 4/4, so pretty good stats already, but it cannot block alone. So I actually like this. We've seen some of this with cannot attack alone when you have a large creature super cheap, which is a little bit troubling, but this one isn't quite as bad. If it just can't block alone, which you might not want to do if you're in the aggressive seat anyway. This seems good to me.
Yeah, I agree. 4-mana 4/4 is, you're not here to block a lot of times in this red decks with that. You're looking at a lot of times near the top of your curve in an aggressive deck, so you don't usually want to be holding a bunch of creatures back to block anyway.
Agreed. A giant coward. Yeah, chat's remarking on the creature type.
Yeah, I'm actually looking something up right now.
Wasn't coward a specific text that prevented something?
Cowards could not block warriors.
Okay, so does that still apply to this, do we think?
That's what I'm trying to discover, and the release notes do not mention anything about that.
Interesting.
So it is possible that was just more of a text-based ability rather than a creature type itself. Because this is, I think they're correct, the first time coward has actually been a creature type.
Yeah, so it might just be that they use the word coward as flavor in the creature type to justify that it cannot block alone, because a coward can't block on its own, right? So it might just be a funny flavor thing, whereas it typically has been a text word, like we said, that cannot block warriors. Yeah, like you were saying.
Yeah, I'm curious on this because I'm surprised it doesn't say anything in the release notes specifically about that.
Regardless, I'm really happy about this card. I mean, it's not a 3/5 or anything, but it's definitely a card I'm happy to play in any of my red decks. I'm giving it a 3.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Okay, I'll go ahead and discuss the next card while you dig so we can keep on schedule, keep these a little shorter. Yep. We got Crush the Weak, guys. A sorcery for 3 mana. Crush the Weak deals 2 damage to each creature. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. It's got Foretell for the same CMC, so it gives it a little bit of flexibility as well. This is good against, more aggressive decks. If you have a ton of small creatures yourself, you might consider just sideboarding this. But, it's not a bad card, and, these kinds of things are pretty easy to play around. If you have it, you just don't drop your little dudes. Or you just wait until it's still a trade in your favor, so it's like a 2 on your end. You kill 1 or 2 of your guys, plus your card, and you kill like 4 of their guys. It depends, but I like the card well enough, but it's situational. It's definitely something I might consider sideboarding more often than I main deck it, depending on how my deck is. If my deck is very slow, you might consider running this main board a lot more, just as kind of an oh shit button, knowing that you're going to take a little bit more time with your deck, and you're less likely to punish yourself if you need to play this.
Yeah, I agree. You're not going to be playing this in their main deck in like red-white decks or occasionally red-black decks that are super aggressive, but if you're playing a bunch of X3s and X4s in your deck, red-blue, red-green potentially, I could see main decking this card. You're probably going to find a way to at least be able to get a 1-for-1 with it.
Now, you might want to side it in, even if you are one of those aggressive decks, against another aggressive deck, because you're far more likely to be able to set it up correctly, but you really don't want this to be a dead card in your hand if you're the aggressive deck playing against a bunch of 2/4s, right? Yep. So yeah, I mean, the card's fine. I think I'm sideboarding it more often than I'm not. I'm in that 2 boat.
Yep. 2, I'll play it.
If you're short,
I'll play it in any deck if I'm short playables. Some decks I'm less happy about it than others.
All right, 2 it is.
So just to circle back on the cowards thing, specific cards when they're in play say that cowards can't block warriors. So if those cards are in play, then that would apply for Craven Hulk.
Okay, but it itself, so the word coward itself does not actually trigger that ability.
No, it has to have something like Boldweir Intimidator or Kargan Intimidator or Pyrophobia, stuff like that.
All right. Next up, guys, we got Demon Bolt. It's a 3-mana instant. Demon Bolt deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. It has Foretell as well. So for the same CMC, which again gives it that flexibility. It's 1 more mana, but it's instant speed as opposed to sorcery speed, which is what we've seen for a lot of previous cards that are like in this wheelhouse, right? And I'm kind of happy to pay an extra mana for that instant speed, but it also has foretell, which lets you break that up and make it even more flexible. So you're really paying like a half a mana.
Yeah, Demon Bolt is, just one of your premium common raid removal spells. It's going to kill most of the things you care about in the format, until you start hitting like, 5 and 6 drops, and even some of them it'll take care of.
So do we consider this premium for 4?
I think so. I think maybe it's possible when we see the rest of red, maybe there's just 3 better ones, but that's pretty unlikely.
Yeah, I think this is kind of on par. We put the like -3 pretty highly. There was 2 for black removals. This one seems, like I said, it's a bit more expensive than I'd like to see for some of it, but usually my 3s and 3.5s are like the 5 damage 5 mana ones. This one is still cheaper, even though it's a mana more than what we typically see for the 4 damage, but instant speed is great. I like it. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, instant speed, and it's almost always going to trade up on mana, or find a way to. You might have to spend it on something small, but it's usually going to trade up.
All right, your turn.
Next up, we have Doomscar Titan. This is a 6 mana 4/4, 4 red, a giant berserker. When Doomscar Titan enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. And it has foretell for 4 and a red, so total foretell cost would be 7 mana, but only a single red. Notably, this is creatures you control, not other creatures, so it counts itself. So it enters as a 5/4 attacker on the turn it's cast. I think this card's a little expensive, but it's certainly powerful and is a really good finishing card if you have any sort of board stall going on.
Yeah, token decks would be pretty good with this. It's a bit too expensive for the haste to be particularly relevant, right? So it's just kind of a +1/+0 pump spell. It gives self haste.
Yeah,
which I guess is the key there, but yeah. You're not likely triggering haste on anything else.
No, it's really giving itself haste. Makes it a better top deck late in the game.
Yep.
If you're not on a stalled board and you're just empty board going card for card, you get 5 damage out of nowhere. But yeah, that's a little too pricey for me, especially with how aggressive red seems to be. But if you had one of these on your top end, that's probably fine.
I feel like one of these, so this is going to be a lot better in Boros when you have creatures that are producing more tokens when they pass away, die, whatever. Whereas in like a is it deck where you're maybe playing some giants and stuff, you're a lot closer to that 12 creature count as opposed to that like 18 creature count. So this is going to very wildly go from unplayable to great top end draw. That I think anyway.
Yeah, the fact that you can foretell it at least helps in the sense that if you just can't find that 6th land drop, you can pay it over 2 turns, which is nice. But red decks are going to often be wanting to curve out and not have that spare 2 mana for a while.
Yeah, you end up paying 1 extra, but also like it's still, and then like I said, if you're in that giants is it deck, it's most likely just going to be a 5 mana 4/4 with haste, which again I'm not super thrilled about for a total of 7 mana.
Yeah, agreed.
But I mean, it's got a bit of a range. Like I said, in the Boros deck, I think it'll be great. It's more like a 3/5 versus like a 2.
Yeah, I think your average deck, averaging those 2 out, you're probably sitting around a 2/5. But you're in that 2/5 range. Not exciting. Sometimes you'll be unhappy to play it. Sometimes you'll be happy with it.
I agree with 2/5. That sounds about right. All right, Dragonkin Berserker, guys. We have a human Berserker for 2/2. Already happy. It's filling out my deck. It's got First Strike. Happy to have 2/2s with First Strike. Always a good place to be. Especially in this aggressive deck where we're seeing a ton of 1/3s and 2/1s and stuff. So, boast abilities, you activate, cost 1 less to activate for each dragon you control. Boast, it creates a red dragon creature token with flying. Oh, okay. Huh. And then each time you do it, the boast becomes cheaper and cheaper if you're able to continue to swing with this card. But at that point, I think if you successfully do it once, then you're probably going to win anyway.
Yeah, most cards in Magic's history that say for each dragon you control are kind of win more. Because if you have several dragons, you're probably in pretty good shape.
You're probably already winning. I agree with that
Yeah.
statement.
So I'm not entirely sure that second ability particularly matters. But that being said, a 2-mana 2/2 first strike on its own is good, and this makes this not a bad card in the late game. The boast ability.
Do we think we're gonna have like a dragon egg so that way we can pop the ability super early with our 2/2 and like just punch them out with giant dragons? That'd be great.
Dragon eggs, but we do have changelings.
Oh, changelings! Yes. Okay, so play a changeling, and then on 4, make a 5/5 dragon and get them.
Yep. I mean, that's probably what you're looking to do in red blue potentially. You've got giants, and you've also got a bunch of blue changelings. So.
All right. So this thing a little bit easy to remove, but a powerhouse if you can trigger its ability once. What are we thinking for score here?
I actually really like this card. I think without the boast ability, just that 2-mana 2/2 first strike would be like a 2/5 on its own.
Oh. Yeah,
maybe even
at least. Honestly, I think it's like more like a 3.
With the boast ability means you got a 2-drop that you're happy to draw on turn 9 or 10, and demands. And if you play it early, it demands to be removed because eventually you're gonna at least turn it into a 5/5.
Yep.
So, I like this card actually around like a 4. I think this card is very good, and it takes over the game if you don't answer it.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. I would almost say it was higher if I thought it could survive some more things. If it was a 2/3 or something like that, I would think it would win more games, but I do think this is going to die reasonably easily.
Yep.
And there's not a lot to protect it, unless we want to play the blue crap, give hexproof, right? So then you can just play it and sit on him as a 2/3. He can't get touched, and then eventually when you attack, you at least get the 1 trigger, but not a great option.
It's always nice to have a 2-drop that's going to force them to spend a removal spell on it.
I agree. Yeah, 2 mans that demand good removal is going to help in the long run because then your big drops are safe.
Yeah.
All right, dual strike, guys. We got a 2-mana instant when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less this turn. Copy that spell. You may choose a new target with foretell. So it's basically just a second copy of your premium removal in red, right?
Yeah. I've never particularly liked these cards in limited. I just find it too hard to draw this and draw the spell you want and have the right amount of mana up and 2 targets you want to spend it on.
I agree with that assessment.
It does have high upside. Foretell at least mitigates the red casting cost. From being too problematic because you can at least split that up into 2 colorless and then a single red. But I'm still not playing this without a giant pile of premium removal in my deck.
And if you have a giant pile of premium removal in your deck, you're probably already in pretty good shape anyway. So it's kind of a meh point. I mean, it gives you a little bit of flexibility, which is nice if you have, let's say, a 4 damage spell and a 2 damage spell, then drawing this allows you to like use them a little bit more flexibly, or maybe save a creature by not having to block and kill something with your 2 damage spell rate. But again, this could just be another premium removal.
Yeah,
I'm wondering, are there like blue spells that you might be interested in drawing more? Is it deck the deck you want this because you just have so much flexibility and a wide range of spell abilities?
It probably is. Like I said, I don't think this card is unplayable, but these are the kind of cards that you either top deck late and are completely dead, or just sit in your hand all game because you've only drawn 1 removal spell and you had to spend it at a time where you couldn't double it.
Yeah, I feel like its upside is just another good removal spell, and in order for that to be likely to happen, you have to have at least like 4 of them in your deck.
Yeah, its upside is pretty much a 1-for-1, right? It turns your removal spell and this into killing 2 things, which makes turns a 1-for-1 into a 2-for-2.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I don't typically run these
there
either.
are some cases where it's better, but unlikely. So I've got this like at a 1/5.
Okay, yeah, I'm in that 1/5-2 range depending on my spell count, but I definitely get behind the 1/5 because, like I said, you need 4 spells worth casting that are cheap, which is hard to come by in most decks.
Agreed.
All right, Dwarven Hammer. We have a 3-mana enchantment. Equipment. Sorry. Artifact equipment. Artifact is the word I was looking for. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 2/1 red dwarf berserker. Then attach the hammer to it. And it gets +3/+0 and has trample.
So what, you're paying 5 mana for a 5/1 trampler?
Yep. With a kind of high equip cost, 3 to get +3/+0 and trample's maybe not the worst that we've seen in this cycle, but it's not exciting.
It's not, but this is the kind of one that you really need a low equipment cost on, because that initial creature is going to die. It's a 5/1. Like that card is going to trade and maybe get you a couple points of damage through, but this is a one-shot equipment unless you keep paying for it, as opposed to some of the other ones which are on creatures with larger toughness that might at least survive for a few hits.
You know, honestly, we're gonna have to wait until we get to the multicolor cards to decide this. But I think we might not be giving these enough credit for sealed specifically. But like the creatures they make with the mana cost that they, with their mana cost and the creature they make has been not that bad. And a lot of times I'm finding that I'm really stretching for playables and I'm playing creatures that are much weaker than these in my sealed pools just because I don't want to go to a third color if I don't have the fixing. So I think in sealed, these might be better than we're giving them credit for, because they are better than some of the trash I know that I run.
Yeah, that's fair. None of them are to the point where I would, play complete garbage over them. But I guess you're right. In sealed, they definitely have a much greater likelihood of being playable. Also, because those games tend to generate more into the, top deck war. Everybody's exhausted their resources, and now this, and you have a lot of mana where at least this can turn a 2/2 into a 5/2, and the 3 mana doesn't matter.
It's creating a creature that is playable in a sealed deck or, a bad draft deck on its own, and then it just has this little added bonus. Even though we keep complaining about the equip cost isn't that bad if we've already gotten the value and eaten their 4/4, right? So then the equip cost can be, 7, and it's still better than nothing, essentially, if we've already equal mana traded with the creature that the hammer itself made. I mean, that said, I'm not in love with this card. I don't think I want to be running it. But I do believe that you're going to see more of these in play, especially in sealed, than what we are expecting.
Yeah, I definitely agree in sealed on that.
I'm going to give it a 2. And I'm, now the more I'm thinking of these, the more I'm considering reevaluating some of the other ones. I think we probably gave them similar ratings, but
yeah, I think they've all the creatures are overpriced, right? You're not playing a 5 mana 5/1 trampler, unless you absolutely have to, but that does leave something behind, so that is relevant.
Agreed.
Right. Next up, we have Dwarven Reinforcements. This is a 4 mana sorcery, 3 in a red. Create 2/1 red dwarf berserker creature tokens, and it has foretell for 1 in a red, so a total of the same cost, 3 in a red, split over 2 turns. This seems a little expensive.
It is
for what we're getting. The typical like white one of these that's 2 mana for 2/1/1s at instant speed. A lot of times, is just so much better than 2/1s that are going to trade with said 1/1s for 4 and at sorcery speed.
We've also seen this in red for 4 mana that made 2/1/1s with prowess, which is quite a bit better as well.
At instant, I believe.
It was at instant, yes.
Yeah.
It didn't have foretell, so you can't break it up nicely, which helps with like playing second cards. And also, it's hard to evaluate these cards in the frame of other sets, just because we don't know like if this, format is slow enough or has enough go wide strategy synergies. Then this is just better. This isn't as good compared to the other cards side by side, but within their set context, we don't know if that's the case. I'm still, not in love with this, but
yeah, the go wide part I agree with. I think the problem for me with this card is in an aggressive deck, getting 2/1s on turn 4 isn't that great, and it's terrible in a control deck.
Yeah, I mean, we've also seen a lot of very good synergies for creature types in this, which is heavier than normal, so having 2 berserkers could be a reason we would want this card as well.
Yep, I agree with that, although it does seem like if berserker is a thing, it seems like 80% of red creatures so far have been berserkers, so they're not going to be hard to find.
Agreed. That I'm on that 2 boat. I'm not happy to run this, but I do think that it will be something you will want in some corner cases.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Might also pair up nicely against other aggressive decks with, Because if you're trading one of them for their 2-drop, then you still get this other creature left behind, which is some sort of advantage.
Yeah, I could see this as a sideboard card against aggressive decks like that. Well, we followed up with a 2/1 dwarf berserker in Fearless Liberator. 1 in a red for 2/1 dwarf berserker with boast. 2 in a red, create a 2/1 dwarf berserker. So there's a lot of 2/1 dwarf berserkers around. In fact, all the last 3 cards all make 2/1 dwarf berserkers.
I do like that you can do it over and over again.
Yeah, it's on turn. You play this on turn 2 and attack, and even if it trades, you can basically replace itself.
Yep, that's some sort of card advantage.
Yeah, it's a good card. Odds are you're not going to get to use this too many times because it's easy to kill, but
yep.
You use it once. You've gotten your value back.
I agree with that.
2 mana, 2 power creature with a reasonable ability that can create card advantage. I'm in for that, but probably right around a 2/5.
I'm also at a 2/5. It's also a berserker and a dwarf, so you got good synergies there. And yeah, I like card advantage. So
yeah.
Fearless Pup, a 1-mana first strike 1/1 with fire breathing, boast fire breathing, so only 1 time. A bit on the expensive side.
Yep, and expensive fire breathing.
Expensive fire breathing, yeah. I usually just use that as a blanket term for pump, make it attack bigger versus an actual. It's usually 1 mana, right, for the typical fire breathing.
Yeah.
It's cute. I'll give it that.
It's cute and it's howling according to its flavor text. I'm very rarely going to play this card, I think, unless this format is even more aggressive than we're thinking.
I don't think
there are decks.
I don't think it can be aggressive enough to make me want to run this.
Yeah, I agree. I again, if I have to play this in an aggressive deck as my 23rd card, it's not the end of the world. But I'm looking to pick this up 14th if ever.
3/1 first striker is not bad, but you have to keep pumping that mana into it. And an aggressive deck wants to be curving out, so you're realistically not pumping this until turn 5, maybe 4. Even then, I'm not particularly happy about it. You can't block with the 3/1 first striker, so
yep.
It has such diminishing returns. You're just not going to get the value out of this card.
We are seeing a lot of 2/1s, so I could see this weirdly coming in out of the sideboard against the deck full 2/1s.
Yeah, I can see that as well. That's a good point. There was a couple of 3/1s as well, so with good abilities. So if you can stonewall those cheap, seems good. I'm on that one, but we'll give it that upside for sideboard.
Yep, sounds good.
Frenzied Raider, 2/2 for 2. All right, I'm in. A demon berserker. It's got half the text that we want to see. Whenever you activate a boast ability, put a +1/+1 counter on this. I'm in love.
Yeah, this thing can grow rapidly. I mean, you can only activate each boast once per turn, but you could activate 2 different ones, and it's going to trigger each time. So this can get out of hand.
I love anything that leaves like permanent value on the board, so it's not just wasted, right? It's great for your curve.
Yep, you're going to want to have a number of boast creatures in your deck, obviously, and preferably ones that are cheap to activate. But that being said, the fail case is a 2-mana 2/2, so there's no reason not to play this in any deck.
3?
Yeah, I like that.
All right, we are in agreement. Moving right along, we're a little bit behind schedule. Frostbite. It's a snow instant for 1. It deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you control 3 snow permanents, it deals 3 instead. I love it.
Yep, great card.
It is, a shock's like a 3.5 on its own. This has got some upside. Snow permanents aren't going to be too hard to find. It's a snow instant itself, so it can be searched up. It can be whatevered, taken off the top of your deck. So in the snow business, this is amazing. In the not snow business, it's amazing minus.
Yeah, said it's great. Any decks who want this, you have no snow permanents in your deck, you're still going to take this card.
Yep. Snow decks are not going to get a hold of these very easily.
No. As opposed to shock or bolt, right? It cannot hit the player, so it's not the same thing. But that doesn't matter as much, when you're talking
in
about
limited.
In limited, you're just taking this card as a removal spell. And the corner case where you could use it to burn your opponent out doesn't exist, but I'm fine with that.
So what are we thinking? Is this a 3/5 or a 4?
Yep. I think it's a 3/5. Anytime the damage is this small, I don't like putting it at 4 because there's just too many good things it can't deal with. But it is, as efficient as can be, 1 mana. So
Yeah, I mean, like I said, a shock in a lot of sets is sometimes shock goes down to a 3 for me, but usually it's
yeah,
a 3/5 depending on the set. Because usually they, if there are no 2/2s, then one of the last times we really liked shock was when we had like the guild mages, right?
yeah.
Premium targets that you see in every draft that are just great. So I think this is a 3/5. In the snow deck, it's going to be substantially better, but I'm pretty happy with shocks in my deck at all times.
Yep. Right. Next up, we have Gold Span Dragon. This is a card a lot of people have been talking about for constructed. It's 3 red for a 4/4 dragon with flying and haste. Whenever it attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token. And treasures you control have tap, sack this artifact, add 2 mana of any one color. So it doubles the mana production of your treasures. Admittedly, this is the only card we've seen so far that makes treasures, so we don't know how relevant that's going to be for limited. But despite that, it's a 5 mana 4/4 flying haste that, even if it gets removed before it can attack, does leave something behind. It's just a
Yes,
treasure token, but it's not nothing. It's something
agreed.
that can help. It's something that can help fix if you're having mana trouble or ramp you. I mean, you're at 5 already, so that's probably only relevant in red green where you've got some 6s and 7s. But
Red blue, some
you know,
giants.
yeah, true. We have seen some big giants.
But I mean,
Um,
we're playing a 5 mana 4/4 flying hasting dragon.
yeah,
I'm happy to close the book there.
yeah,
You can put as much token icing as you want on it, treasure icing,
yep.
and we're still running this card. So
Oh, 100%.
it's a 4/4 for 4 flyer, so it's going to close out the game very quickly. So do we like this enough to give it a 5? Is the question. I will say there was a 3 mana removal spell.
Yep.
There's multiple common removal spells that eat this card at instant speed, so maybe it's a little too easy to remove for me to count this as a 5.
Yeah, I think if what it left behind when it was dealt with immediately was anything more substantial, it'd be a 5. But I think I've just got it at a 4/5.
4/5 for me as well. It seems if it was a 4/5 flyer, I'm more in that 5 boat, just
Yeah.
because you're cutting the things that deal with this in half.
Yep. Yeah, that would be a huge difference.
But it does seem like there is a fair amount of things that are dealing 4 damage.
Yep.
Or just straight exiling. Aggie Mob? It is a troll berserker for 5 mana, 4/5 with boast, deal 1 damage to any target, not player, not specific creature, to any target. So it's got some good flexibility. I like that.
And it says Grarg, whatever that means. Um, yeah, 5 mana 5/4 is it's not the best stats. Just I'd almost rather it be a 4/5. But it's fine. Uh, Reasonable stats. Berserker, boast ability can ping. A 2/1. It makes it much harder for small decks to like double block this. Because you can, they can't really double block with an X1 because it'll just eat it before damage is dealt. So
Yeah. It makes it the extra ping damage also makes it a little harder for double block possibilities, because a lot of times they'll do like 2/3/3s, right? And this ability
yeah,
makes it so that way you can make it a 2-for-1, which is nice. Kind of limit their
yeah,
options.
yeah. It kind of turns it into basically a 6/4 for double blocking purposes.
Or you just are killing one of their 1/1s or 2/1s or 3/1s to prevent it from dying in the first place.
Yeah.
It's got some really good flexible.
Yep.
Also a berserker, which is going to come in handy. I like it.
Yep, the boast ability is pretty cheap considering it's a 5-drop, so you've definitely got some mana out on the board when this is going to attack for the first time. Earliest being turn 6. So, I like this card. So, it's a solid common. I've got this probably around a 3.
Yeah, I'm leaning on a 3, kind of a 2/5, just because it is a little pricey, but I think it'll actually put in a lot more work than we're expecting. That 1 extra damage makes it really nice.
Yeah, I agree. After that card, we have Emmersterm Raider. It is a 2 mana 2/1 for 1 and a red, a creature demon berserker. And when Emmersterm Raider enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card.
Real quick, can we go back to this?
Yeah.
The boast ability doesn't need to be done when attacked. It doesn't say attack with this card, you may activate the boast. So you could do that second main. You can do it after they declare their blocks. You have so much flexibility. So it's not like you're forced to ping one of the like if they have three 3/3s, you aren't forced to do it on attacks to ping one of them and they just block with the other two, right? You can do it in response, like when they make the block happen. So it is really limiting. I do like this card the more that I think about it. Most of the time when you have attack triggers like that, it has to happen when attacking, giving your opponent the flexibility to make decisions accordingly, whereas this is a little bit trickier. And if they don't block knowing that you can do that, then you just shoot them in the face.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I'm done.
All good. But yeah, Emmersterm Raider, got a 2-mana 2/1 that, enters battlefield, you can discard and draw. We saw this card, actually this exact card in the last set, except it was a wizard. And that played into synergies just like Berserker seems to. Reasonable card, but nothing exciting, probably round of 2.
Yeah, this is basically, we saw this in the last set, right? The little goblin wizard.
Fischer wizard.
Big Ben makes a nice point for the last guy as well. Use the black card that gives death touch on our last card. Pew pew pew. All right, so this seems fine. Fissure Wizard is it's a berserker, so it fills a slot the same way Fissure Wizard does. It cycles late game. It turns your early, more aggressive 2-drop, even though it's got not great stats. But if you need 2 drops to fill, it's good. And then if you draw it late, it lets you pitch a land. So keep that in mind. Keep some lands in your hand if you tend to get to the later game and have extra. I always like, then you draw Fissure Wizard, you get a body on the board plus basically a fresh draw, which is really nice. So, I mean, these are always fine to me. 2/5.
Yep.
Magda, Brazen Outlaw. We have a rare 2/1 for 2, legendary creature, dwarf berserker. Other dwarves you control get +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token. Okay, so we have another treasure option here. It's also got some staying power, and so whenever a dwarf attacks, including itself, you get a treasure, so you can accrue a bunch of treasures really quickly. This also allows you to splash in colors you typically can't splash in. Sacrifice 5 treasures, search your library for an artifact or dragon card, and put that into the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. Okay. That's cool. We'll have to see how many dragons there are in the format that aren't, at rare.
Yeah, the only ones we've seen so far are changelings. The only actual dragon has been a mythic.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, there might be some playable artifacts that make this relevant, and if you get a couple extra treasure tokens, then that's cool.
Yeah, the nice thing is that the dwarves create treasures whenever they're tapped. So if they're crewing things, they're still creating treasures.
They don't have to attack. That's true.
Yeah.
Or use an ability or whatever.
Or use an ability. Yep. So, it's a fine card. Definitely a build around because you need probably both dwarves and stuff worth getting out of your library.
Well, that said, when it attacks, good, it's still a 2-drop 2/1, so you could be creating treasure tokens by itself. So I think on its base, it's still like a 3 for me. It's still like a filler card I'm pretty happy to run because it's a 2-drop that's going to do some good stuff. And then if you've got any more synergy, it goes up, but I wouldn't say huge.
Yeah, I think I'm a little lower on this than you, although I think it probably does add up to a 3. But I think if you don't have a significant number of dwarves, this is a 2. It's just a 2/1 that probably makes 1 treasure and dies.
It depends. I mean, you can get in some good stuff with, if you've got removal and tempo and an aggressive deck. But yeah, I mean, a 2/1 that trades and makes a treasure to me is I think at the point where it's like filler I'm excited about, and that's my 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think it adds up to a 3 with potential synergies.
Yeah.
I'm just lower on it, I guess, on its face.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm also probably averaging the 2 together a bit.
All right, open the omen paths. 2 in a red for an instant. Choose 1. Add 2 mana of any one color and 2 mana of any other color. Spend this mana only to cast creatures or enchantment spells, or creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. This is a weird split card, as those two things have absolutely nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, so you're ramping one and fixing, or it's a bad trumpet blast.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the fact that it's useful in wildly different situations is nice, but it's hard to imagine a deck that particularly wants both.
Yeah, a deck that wants to be aggressive, go wide, and fix, and I don't know.
Yeah, so in which case you're basically whichever one of the two you get, whichever side you get, you're paying 3 mana for, and you're losing the flexibility bonus.
Also, like, the trumpet blast is weak, and like, if in my aggressive decks where I want to poop out my hand very aggressively, I kind of don't want to spend one of my cards on this for an extra mana for like a bad writ.
Yeah, you know, usually when you see a 3 mana ramp, a lot of times it's actually putting lands into play, so it's a permanent ramp. Or it's, you know, you see the trumpet blast where it's +2/+0. So it's just bad on both sides.
I'm on that one plan.
Agreed.
All right, provoke the trolls. We have a 4 mana instant. Trying to move it along. Provoke the trolls.
Not something you should do on Twitch.
What?
Provoke the trolls.
Oh, but I love doing that. Provoke the trolls deals 3 damage to any target. If a creature is dealt damage this way, it gets +5/+0 until end of turn. So we've seen this before with cards like Augur Spree, where it's like a -4 +4 -4, so it can be used as a, you know, small end removal spell, or it can be a finisher if you get yourself into that situation if you have a 4/4 or better. So it's got some flexibility. You know, it's a little bit expensive, but it's expensive for the damage, but it has this, like I said, also kind of bonus if you've got some big beats.
Yeah. I know I've heard stories of Augur Spree being cast in that way. I've never done it.
Oh, I definitely have.
Yeah, I know people have. I've just never done it, but I know that is valuable, that flexibility. And I think it's actually more valuable on this card because it's only 3 instead of 4. You know, so you're more likely to have a target on your side that can live through it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. But it's a little bit more expensive than Augur Spree as well.
Yeah, but single color. So yeah, I like this card. It's a little expensive, but the flexibility is nice.
Instant speed. I don't think it's great. I mean, I'm in that like 3 range, but I'm not displeased to play it.
Agreed. I've got it as a 3 as well.
Quakebringer, guys, giant berserker, something we've seen a lot of. Your opponents can't gain life. Okay, shut down some life gain decks. It's a 5 mana 4/5, already fine stats. It's got foretell for 1 additional mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. Yes, 2 HG, my favorite. This ability triggers only if Quakebringer is on the battlefield. Wait a minute.
Or if it's in the yard and you control a giant.
What? So I read that and then I was like, wait a minute, I have to reread this because I think I misread it. Oh shit, so it's gonna keep triggering if you have another giant on the board? Oh my goodness.
I'm going to say that this is going to be the card with the most mistriggers in this format in paper.
Oh, for sure.
Oh well, other than the fact that it's a mythic, so you won't see it as much. But
that seems good though. It's already got decent stats for what it is. It's gonna, you know, it's got giant and berserker, which are 2 things we're looking for. Foretell, some flexibility. And it just is gonna pew them to death.
Yeah, I think this card is great.
Even if you can't attack with its large body, they're still on a pretty short clock at 2 damage a turn. And then if they do kill it, they still have to then proceed to kill every single other giant you can produce. And there is no shortage of giants in this set. If you get this in pack 1, you will have plenty.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say about the card. The card's great. I think the gain life is kind of not irrelevant, but not a huge deal. But it's a bonus.
Once it's in their yard, you know, then the life gain can mitigate the triggers. But when he's on the board, it can't. So that's really interesting. It's a super short clock. What do you think for this card?
I've got this card right around a 4.
Yeah, I think I might be a little higher on it just because of how easy I think it'll be to get the giants. And, you know, it's so hard to stop. If any giant triggers this 2 damage every turn, like they're gonna run out of removal. They're not gonna be able to handle everything, and you don't even need to attack. Is the great thing. you know, it's not, like I said, it's not great stats on its own, but it doesn't have to attack. But you do have to have other giants. So I think if you're pack one picking this, I'm more 4/5. If this is a is it third pack on color red draw, then it's, you know, probably closer to a 3.5 or a 4. So
Yep, I agree with both of those statements.
I'm gonna give it a 4/5 just because I'm excited. Crush them. Okay, Reckless Crew. Create X 2/1 Red Dwarf Berserker creature tokens, where X is the number of vehicles you control plus the number of equipments you control. For each of those tokens, you may attach equipments you control to it. Fine if you have a build around, but we don't know.
I think this card is pretty bad. We saw 4 mana make 2/2/1s, and we weren't thrilled with that. And it's going to be hard to have 3 or 4 vehicles and equipment out, because that means you've played them. And how many creatures could you have played? And are you dead yet?
Yeah, the nice thing is this card does make it a little nicer to run those cards, because it makes all those expensive equip costs we've been talking about, you know, it lowers the value on those. And it also makes it so that way you can have a little bit more vehicles in your deck without the downside of not being able to crew as often. Like usually you want to only have 2 tops 3 vehicles, just because the likelihood of you being able to crew them, because those are taking creature spots, is very unlikely. Whereas this kind of mitigates that. So I think the only, this is very low. This is a 1. But yeah, let's say hypothetically late pack 1, I take one of these. I happen to be in red. It's, you know, just pick it up if it's better than like a crap creature, which you're likely to do anyway. And then pack 2, you open another one of these. I'm down. Let's go. You know, start drafting all of the things. But you really kind of need 2.
And there are only a total of, I just looked, there are only a total of 3 vehicles in the entire set.
Oh, really? That's it? Okay, never mind.
one uncommon and 2 commons. We've seen some equipment, but
well, yeah, there's an equipment in every single color, plus if there's any in the artifact range.
Yeah, there are one.
But getting to equip those again for free was, you know, really mitigates that cost that we were super low on. But yeah, with 3 vehicles, not happy.
Yep.
But it does seem cute.
Yeah.
Moving on, Run Amok, guys. This is a card we've seen. 2 mana, target attacking creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample. I like this combat trick. It's great for aggressive decks. It's not as flexible as we'd like to see most pump spells, but it is huge.
Yeah, I think you're gonna obviously want this in an aggressive deck and want no part of it in non-aggressive decks. It only attacks. It only works on attackers, but you know, there's a place for this card.
The format seems aggressive, so I'm happy to rate it on the side of the more aggressive deck, with the note that yeah, you just want no part of it if you're not aggressive. But I think it's a 3 in the deck that, you know, in 50% of the decks. It's a card I'm pretty happy to run one of.
Yeah, I guess I said we're just usual. I'm lower on combat tricks than you. I don't think I almost never put them at 3, but
I almost never do either. I just really like Run Amok. I've drafted a ton of just 7-win decks that have 3 Run Amoks. It's just it's hard to play around them. They do when they hit so hard. It's just baffling. Like they get into a double block situation, and then you kill both and trample over, and 3 damage, and it turns your 4/4 that they're chumping into just lethal damage.
Yeah, I guess in my head I'm thinking if they're chumping, I'm already in pretty good shape.
That's true.
You know, there's the fact that this even aggressive decks sometimes have to be on the defensive, and then this card is completely dead.
Yeah, sometimes. So yeah, again, the slower decks are definitely going to want no part of this card.
Yeah.
I tend to draft a lot of aggressive decks, and I get so many home runs.
And I don't. So that's where we're different on this. I tend to avoid them like the plague if I can.
I like them. They're fun. Rune of Speed. We have a Rune Aura enchantment. We've seen all of these. Play it, draw a card. As long as an enchant permanent you control, it gets +1/0 in haste. And if you can, you can put it on a equipment as well. I think this is probably the lowest one for me. I've never been a fan of the like equipments that you can then equip to give haste.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is basically unplayable. Again, you know, your last card of your deck because it cycles, fine, but it's a 1. And I will correct myself on vehicles. There's a modal one and a green one, so there are 5 vehicles, but they're both at rare.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the rare ones are hard to count for sure. Yep. Seize the Spoils, 3 mana sorcery spell. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards, create a treasure token. Helps fix, helps ramp, helps filter out your lands, smooth your early game draws if you need them, get cards into your graveyard. Like, all of that said, none of them are particularly amazing. It's like 1 extra mana for that treasure token. Usually it costs 2 for this ability. So I'm happy to run one of these if I have room in my deck, but that said, I'm always happy to cut them as well. I'm in that 2 boat.
Yeah, this is one of those cards, if you put it in your deck, that's fine, but I almost always find a way to cut it for something that has bigger impact. But it's not a terrible card to play, too, seems right.
There's 117 people in here. Everybody on YouTube is going to think Big Ben's our only watcher. Shackles of Treachery, 3 mana sorcery spell, gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it. It gains haste whenever this creature deals combat damage to target equipped creature. Wait, what? Whenever this... So small.
Whenever this creature deals damage, destroy target equipment attached to it. So it lets you steal a creature that they've equipped.
And then destroy their equipment.
And it doesn't know that, even though it gives haste, it doesn't have to be combat damage. If you have something that can ping, like we've seen, that can work as well.
Well, it says whenever this creature deals combat damage. So the creature equip has to be the pinger, which seems very not likely.
Oh, yeah. It's I'm just saying it doesn't have to be combat damage.
You could fight it. If we have green fight spells, that would be more likely, I think, than particularly getting an equipped creature that's a pinger.
Agreed. That being said, that end part I don't think is that relevant because most of the equipment we've seen is pretty bad. And
most sets you don't want really the steal spells unless you can sack it.
We have seen village rights in black, so you know there is you're a little bit of a combo we've seen before, but
I would say this is a 2, and then a sideboard in very heavily goes up to like a 3-ish if you see some equipments.
Yep. Agreed. All right. After that, we've got Smashing Success. 3 in a red for an instant. Destroy target artifact or land. If an artifact is destroyed this way, create a treasure token. So just another variant of Demolish that we've seen. These cards are pretty much never main deckable.
Agreed. 1 it is.
And really too expensive to even be a good sideboard card.
Agreed. And like destroying, it does say artifact, so there might be some relevance there. The land part's almost never relevant. I don't side those in typically at all. Yeah. Yeah. I'm putting it in the 1 range, which is good because we're running a bit behind. Ew, he's got gross thumbnails. Squash, 5 mana. This spell costs 3 less if you control a giant. So really big upside there. That makes it only 2 mana, and it deals 6 damage to target creature or player at instant speed. Jiminy Christmas. I mean, I'm happy to run this as is anyway at 5 mana. If you have giants, this card becomes nuts.
Agreed. If you don't have giants, you don't want too many of these. But you'll still play the first one, probably the second one, even without giants.
Yeah, like last night, I was happy to run 2 Smash to Smithereens in my crap core deck, right?
Yep.
Same mana cost. I mean, and that one's 2 red. So I would say this is a 3/5, and then if you have giants, it's a 4.5.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So let's just put it at a 4.
Yep. Ooh, I'm gonna read the next one because it's a fun one.
Okay, good. That's a lot of text.
It's a tiny text, yeah. Tybalt's Trickery. 1 in a red for an instant. Counter target spell. So we got a red counter spell. Choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards, then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card with a different name than that spell. They may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then they put the exiled cards on the bottom in random order. So you're countering a spell, they mill 1, 2, or 3 cards, and then exile cards until they hit a spell that's not the same as the spell that you countered. And they get to play that for free.
Okay. Interesting. So choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. They mill that many cards. Then exile cards from the top of their library. Okay, so they don't play it from the 1, 2, or 3. So
no, I think that's a constructed thing to prevent you from setting up the top of your library and like countering your own spell and cheating out Emrakul or something.
Yes, that makes sense.
I mean, I don't think this card is actually good, but it has some sideboard potential.
Yeah, I mean,
Again,
if you're countering a dragon,
bombs.
it's not likely that they'll hit something relevant.
Yeah,
but it's not card advantage. It's card
no, it's
disadvantage.
card disadvantage. But if you see something in game 1 that you can't really answer, I might bring this in out of the board.
Yeah. And if you know if they have a big dragon or 2, then you're happy to then deal with their 4/4 or whatever, their vanilla something.
Yeah.
It's still a 1.
Yeah, I think it's a 1. But I think I will probably at some point in this format get got by this card.
Yes.
Be very unhappy about it.
Yes. And I'm sure at some point in some format, my opponent will play it on my creature, and then I will put a dragon into play, and they will get got. Also, the flip side will happen.
Yes.
All right, we got an equipment here, guys. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for 1, only 1 equip cost. Already not bad. Whenever equipped creature becomes blocked, deal 1 damage to defending player. I don't hate it. In an aggressive deck, it gives your creatures reach. If you've got tokens, it makes them basically arsonists, right?
Yeah. I think card's fine. It's low impact, but cheap, which is fine for an aggressive deck. And you're right, it turns your 1 power guys into 2 like real threats at 2 power that might actually be able to attack. I think you're only going to want it in very aggressive decks, but those decks will want a copy of this.
Yeah, I can agree with that. This is almost specific enough. It's worth a split. I try to limit the amount of splits that I have when doing these ratings, but this one seems unplayable or decent. Like in the 18 creature deck that can even produce tokens, the Boros deck, this seems good. I'm in that 3 boat, and in anything other than that, it's a 1.
Yeah, it's a 0 in a control deck if we gave zeros. So
yes.
Yeah, I agree with the split.
Hey, Asmodee Games, welcome. Can't you counter your own spell with Tybalt? I guess that's how shenanigans happen. Yeah. So you can, and I think that's why you pick 1, 2, or 3 at random for constructed purposes. So you can't scry your deck top and then counter some trash spell and then trick in your like he said Emrakul or something. So the excess phrasing there is just to prevent people from doing cheaty things. But yeah, you could counter your 1-drop spell and then gamble on getting something bigger.
Yeah, in which case you're still looking at card disadvantage. You're 2 for 1ing yourself, but you might hit something worth it.
Yes.
All right. Next up, we have Tundra Fumarole. It's a snow sorcery for 1 red. And Tundra Fumarole deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. And you add a colorless mana for each snow spent to cast the spell. And until end of turn, you don't lose that mana as steps and phases end. So I mean, really, it's just a 3 mana deal 4 sorcery speed, which I'll play. I'm happy to play in any deck. You can get a refund on it for snow, and you can use that. You don't have to use that right away. You can carry it into combat, as for instance, or you can if you play this first main, or you can play it second main. I just think this card's very good. It's a rare, but it's another one that snow decks are gonna have a tough time getting their hands on because everybody's gonna want it.
Yeah, it's definitely playable outside of that snow deck. I agree. It's a rare, so it's not super important.
Yeah.
It's playing around it. It's not going to be super bad, but it's also a sorcery speed at 4 damage. Wasn't there the instant 3 mana 4 damage spell already at common? How much was? Let me go back. That seems relevant.
Last set Thundering Strike was 2 mana. Oh, you mean the Demon Bolt?
Yeah, in this set, right?
Yeah.
Demon Bolt, 3 mana, instant speed, 4 damage target creature or planeswalker.
Yeah, it didn't have the snow stuff with it.
Yeah, so like the Demon Bolt's just better for the not snow deck. It's easier to cast. It has some flexibility with Foretell.
Yeah.
So really, the common is better than the rare in 90% of decks. It's just the snow deck that wants this, and even then they're creating colorless, which may or may not be relevant, especially because you've had to like sink 2 of your red into this, so it like removes some of that flexibility.
Yeah, it gives you a chance to double spell, but you're right, it's not going to come up very often, especially in limited.
Yeah, and it's only that in the exact snow deck, which
all that being said, I'm still playing 3 mana deal 4 every time.
Absolutely.
So I think it's still like a 3.
Well, we had Demon Bolt at a 4, so the only difference.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I thought we had Demon Bolt at a 3/5, so I was dropping it down 1. But if we had that as a 4, then yeah, I would put this at a 3/5.
Yeah, I put this at a 3/5 because it's a sorcery speed, which is huge.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, we got a Firewalker, 3/2 for 3, human berserker with boast 1. That triggers our boast guy we like. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. I like that.
Yeah, it's this is super the type of cheap. Card drawing. Yeah, this is the type of card drawing red tends to get. The exile type effect. Short-term card draw, which is good. 3 mana 3/2 is probably not going to get eaten. It's probably going to trade at worst, and you have a pretty good chance to replace it.
Yeah, on turn on turn 4, you can hit anything 3 or lower, and then you might just want to sit on it for a turn or 2 if it's most likely to trade, and guarantee that you can cast whatever it is. And it does say play, not cast. So if you hit a land, it does help get you the land as well.
You beat me to exactly what I was going to say, which is if you are attacking with this card, do not play a land first.
Yep.
If you hit the land, you can play it, and there's no timing restriction on playing the card. Only has to be this turn.
Yeah, there's a big distinction. I catch a lot of people at GPs and stuff trying to cast the land that is in exile, which they cannot do. So just keep that in mind. I've also seen people not cast or not play a land because they assume it says cast. So it's a double-edged sword. You get nailed each way depending on where your head is at. So keep that in mind, guys. I'm on a 3.
Yep, I'm on 3. What is nice is that this doesn't put you in the conflict that like Chandra Torch of Defiance does, where you have to play the card immediately. So it's like, do I need the extra mana by playing my land, or if I hit a land, like you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, if you have a good amount of cheap removal and you're likely to cast, to be able to trigger the boast multiple times early game, it's going to put in some really good work. But on its base, we're just kind of assuming it's going to hit like a half a card bonus, because like sometimes it'll be a land, but that's still kind of getting out of a draw there. Or it then there's the times where you hit it and you can't cast it for whatever reason, if either the spell is not relevant or it's too expensive.
Yep. All right, we're on our last red card here.
An hour and 13 minutes, so we're actually doing good.
Vault Robber, 1 in a red for a 1/3 dwarf rogue, and you can pay 1 and tap it, and exile a creature from your graveyard to create a treasure token.
I don't hate it.
I don't hate it, but it seems really off theme for red as a 2 mana 1/3. It's like the first defensive card we've seen.
It seems cutesy kitchen table because there's a lot of red dwarves and things that sacrifice treasure tokens to go search something out. So it seems a little bit more kitchen table magic than it does limited. But I mean, it's neat to see some fixing and stuff in red. So in the last couple sets, I've been really hesitant to splash outside of anything that wasn't green. So this allows you to do a little bit more cutesy things with your deck.
Yeah. I said I'm not particularly thrilled with it because it's slow ramp, right? Because you have to get creatures into your yard. So
absolutely.
And you're paying 1 to do it, so it takes a turn even after that before you're really ramping. It does fix right away.
Most of the synergies are going to be rares, so you probably won't have them.
Yeah. So I mean, 2 mana 1/3 is fine. I think this is like around a 2. Definitely worth having in your sideboard against aggressive decks.
Yeah, I put it at a 2 as well. 1/3s for 2. I'm typically okay to have in my decks as the base filler, because a lot of decks are strapped on 2-drops. The ability, you know, gives you some flexibility for splash, but other than that, you're really not going to get a ton of value out of it unless you've got those rare cards. It is a dwarf, and we did see like a dwarf lord, so you know it's got some okay things there. Rogue we haven't seen a whole lot of, but we also haven't done green, but I can't imagine there's green rogues. That seems weird.
Unless there are green changelings.
Yeah. So then we're really looking only at dwarf here, so it's like half of a creature type, really.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm also in that 2 range. That said, guys, this is the end of the red. I'm going to cut it here real quick just to keep our videos a little bit shorter. I will be streaming the rest of the set review today, so if you're watching this on YouTube, either they are already uploaded or they will be uploaded by the end of the day. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye, guys! I'd like to give a special thank you to those of you who have signed up for our Patreon. Without you guys, none of this would be possible. This content is also sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. and KMC Sleeves. If you guys enjoyed the content, consider checking out the links below and using our discount codes. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.